Meal planning? Meal planning is hard enough on land. What do you mean I have to do it on a boat? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and in today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast, I'm going to be sharing some tips and ideas on how to meal plan for your cruise without freaking out about it. You're listening to the Boat Galley podcast, tips, reviews, and how-tos for your cruising adventure. I'm Nika Waters. This episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Marmara Imports. Their hand-loomed, fair trade, organic cotton Turkish towels are highly absorbent, dry quickly, fold flat, and are soft and luxurious, perfect for life aboard. Use coupon code PODCAST10 for 10% off any order of $40 or more. MarmaraImports.com. More than a towel. Slow down, slow down. When I talk about meal planning, pretty much the planning, it's in quotation marks. I'm doing those air quotes with my fingers. For a lot of people, meal planning is the way that you are able to eat in a healthy fashion, in an inexpensive fashion, and in a way that allows for the least amount of stress and worry. Sometimes that's true on land, for sure. And sometimes that's true when you're cruising, for sure also. But in general, my version of meal planning is a lot more flexible and a lot more loose. There are a couple things that I absolutely say you've got to do, and a few things that I say you really shouldn't do. And then I have some 4 loose parameters that I go through, 4 steps that I go through to help me anytime I'm trying to come up with a meal plan. I use this on land, but it also works superbly well for cruising. And in fact, my land-based planning is much informed by the way that I plan and eat and provision when I'm cruising. So how do I do it? What's the magic? How do I make all these meals? And it doesn't even matter if I'm talking about a cruise of a weekend or a week or 2 weeks or a month or even longer. There are 2 things you absolutely positively need to do when you're meal planning. And there are 3 things that you really shouldn't do when you're meal planning. Number 1 of the to-do, just breathe. Relax. You totally have this. Number 2 of the things you must do, it's in the same vein. Trust and believe in yourself. Particularly, trust and believe in the kinds of food that you like to eat, and so does the rest of your family or whoever you're cruising with. Trust and believe in yourself. Yeah, it's really okay. You can do this. And then the 3 don'ts. Number 1, don't overthink this whole thing. Really, you know how to cook. Even if you think you don't, I bet there's some things, even if it's like peanut butter sandwiches, there's probably something that you know how to cook really, really well. And guess what? The whole point of going cruising is just to relax and enjoy yourself. So don't overthink this whole thing. Number 2, don't really take somebody else's meal plan as gospel. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't go to your next door neighbor and say, hand me your food list and what you're going to have for the next couple of weeks, and go to the grocery store and buy everything that's on there. Maybe you would. Most people that I know would not. You might get some ideas from it, but you're probably not going to take their meal plan and use it completely. That said, though, if you'd like a meal plan, I'll put a link to a PDF where you can get an idea for a meal plan that I put together, actually using exactly these same tips that I'm about to share with you. So go check it out. It's in the show notes. Number 3, don't get bent out of shape if it doesn't work out perfectly. You might be a planner. You might write out everything you're going to eat for the next 2 weeks. But here's the thing. If you write down that you're going to make spaghetti and meatballs on Tuesday and you share that with everybody who's going to be on the boat with you, but Tuesday turns out to be a day where somebody caught fresh fish and the evening was perfect for grilling, and you just had an extended sundowner session and decided you were going to simply grill fish for dinner. If you told people that you were going to have spaghetti and meatballs and then you had grilled fish, somebody might get annoyed. So don't get bent out of shape if it doesn't work out perfectly. And the other don't is don't tell people what the plan is that you have if you make one. So there you go. Some do's and some don'ts that just generally fit for meal planning. They work on land as well as on the boat. I will tell you that I used to meal plan like a crazy person. I would be one of those people who would write out every single meal for the week. I'd craft the grocery list against it. I'd make sure I had every ingredient taken care of. Heck, on that list, I'd even write down what page in what cookbook a given recipe came from. And I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, right? I was meal planning. And then week after week after week, I would end up with half the groceries not used, half of the recipes not made. I might lose a cookbook because even though it's amazing how that can happen, I'd change my mind about something that I wanted to make, or a meeting would run unexpectedly late and I wouldn't have the time that I thought I would. Or somebody would come home from school having had a really, really, really bad day, and all they needed to eat to make them feel better was macaroni and cheese. Throw that meal plan out the window. And in short, my week ashore, it actually began to look a lot more like my weeks cruising. And so what I mean by that is that for me, cruising meal planning winds up being more along the lines of, what do I feel like? What ingredients do I have on hand? And how much time do I want to spend in the galley? More as opposed to something like, well, today's Tuesday and I said I was going to have spaghetti and meatballs. How do I organize it though? Because there's planning and there's organization. And I do actually follow a loose 4-part process to get myself organized in terms of cruising food stuff. This particularly holds true when we're talking about short cruises, a month or less. And the only other thing that changes when I'm talking about a longer cruise is that the idea of checking the weather per se becomes a little bit less important, because pretty much, let's face it, we're going to be hitting most kinds of weather. But the other things, absolutely spot on. So the first thing I do is I think about special events that are coming up. I'm going to look and make sure that I have things. If somebody's birthday is coming up or an anniversary, I think about the favorite kinds of things that they like to eat, and I want to make sure they have those on board. Maybe I'm going to be celebrating getting past a particularly brutal section of coastline. The getting past the mouth of the Potomac River in the Chesapeake Bay comes to mind. We might be talking about, oh yeah, hey, all of those college applications, they're submitted. What kind of celebration are we going to do? I also think about the kinds of activities that we might be doing ashore. If there are going to be a couple of long days with long hikes when I'm making sure that I'm taking lunch with us, I want to make sure I have the stuff to make good lunches that don't necessarily require refrigeration. Am I going to be spending a lot of evenings stargazing? Maybe going to the beach for a bonfire? Maybe we've got guests coming in and I want to spend time with them and have some special things that they might like. The second thing that I think about is I think about the weather. I don't know about you, but I cook differently if it's 95 degrees and humid than I do if it's 35 degrees and sleeting. So I look and say, is it going to be snowing and icing? Side note, probably that's not, if I'm cruising someplace where it's snowing and icing, then something has gone drastically wrong. Am I looking at rain and fog? Am I looking at really humid, steamy days? Am I looking at rain and fog? Am I looking at really humid, steamy days? The third thing is I want to think about what items I need to use up. There might be a Ziploc bag filled with cooked pasta. There might be a bowl of leftover pizza toppings. There might be yogurt that is definitely in need of being used. I can think of a number of dishes that I could make with those things. And as a frugally minded cruiser, I definitely don't want to throw out food items. And the fourth thing is I want to think about what kinds of grocery stores that I'm going to be able to visit. Am I in an anchorage where I might not want to go anywhere for, I don't know, a couple of days, and the nearest store is 20 miles away anyway? Am I anchored someplace cool with a tiny, tiny town with only a gas station that might have some staples, but probably not even any fresh things like onions? Am I at a dock with access to a car and endlessly superbly stocked stores? Am I at a place and a time where there's an accessible farmer's market that I can go to? The thing is, once you answer these 4 questions, You'll be well on your way to thinking about meal planning, and again, I'm doing the air quotes, and provisioning with ease. Because once you think about it. If you have a special event you need to celebrate, that might be one certain thing that you want to make sure you have. If you think about the weather and you look, in the next couple of weeks, you're going to have a mix of really hot sunshine and then a couple of days of like 50 degrees and rain, you might shift your brain from grilling meats or vegetables to things that are a little bit more cozy, and there's that good old spaghetti and meatballs kind of thing, or spaghetti and sauce. If you have those items if you have items in the refrigerator or in the pantry that you need to use up, that can be dinner right there. Boom, figured out. And then if you know you've got certain grocery stores coming up, it's going to affect both how much you buy at one point in time, or let you say, oh, you know what? I don't have to stock up on all these things because I know I'm ready to go in just a couple of days. So there's the thing. Cruising meal planning in general, can wig you out. It doesn't have to. There's just 4 simple questions that you want to ask yourself to make cruising meal planning just as simple as everything else that you have going on. I can't wait to see you out there. Thanks again to our sponsor, MarmaraImports.com. More than a towel, use with imagination. Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and tell all your friends about it. And a review is always appreciated. Slow down, slow down.